I think that for now it's not, and
Yes.
it's subject to our review.
Yes, and thankfully you are now the president, and that you have laid down for us some of your plans to improve the benefit packages of some of these particular diseases. Okay. So during the transfer of those funds, the benefit packages given by PhilHealth, from your point of view, was not ideal. I'm asking you as the president of PhilHealth now.
It's not yet ideal,
Yes.
Your Honor.
Is it already universal healthcare level according to the, as defined by the law? The benefit packages, hindi pa.
In terms of financial risk protection, hindi pa.
Not yet, okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, and I understand that universal healthcare is not only the funding, not only the finances given, but it contains many other things. It's a comprehensive package. I understand that. Okay. To me, listening to the Department of Finance Secretary, it makes sense to look for funds somewhere to find a way in order to either address the deficit not by loans but from excess funds. To me, it makes economic sense. And I must say that it makes economic sense because one of my professors is an Amici curé, Dr. Orville Solon, who is also, I think, a health economist. But again, only from the point of view of the DOF, looking at the macro figures. But to you, does it make sense that PhilHealth has not yet accomplished the benefit packages that it wants, and yet funds were taken from it? Do you think from that perspective alone, not from the perspective of the macroeconomic situation, that it did not make good sense?
Your Honor, if I may, and this is my personal view, I think we should take care of the absorptive capacity of PhilHealth first. And the opportunity cost on keeping the fund will probably be better used.
Because morality was also mentioned. Was it moral that PhilHealth has not yet accomplished what it needed to do, and yet funds were taken from it? Your personal point of view.
The lag time to get to a certain point when you do reform would also take time, given the immensity of the task that lies ahead.
I will take that as your answer, and I will accept that as your answer. Now, again, is there a relationship of attending to the health of our people to overall development?
Definitely, Your Honor.
Yes. And in fact, in some countries like in India, there is what they call a Kerala model. That instead of spending on a lot of infrastructure, they would spend more on health, education, and social services. And that actually turned Kerala around. That what happened there was they breached all their poverty targets because what they focused on first was human capital, the way what we call it as economists, correct? Health, education, and social services. So this is a model, correct? Not necessarily our model. It is a model, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And it is something that can be taken into consideration by the executive, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, but it is for the judiciary to also keep in mind that there are other models of development other than building infrastructure, etc., what others call a trickle-down effect, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
So just for us to take into consideration, okay? Again, thank you very much. And I do not know if I should congratulate that you are now the PhilHealth president, but certainly I know that knowing your credentials, that you have the wherewithal. Thank you. May I now call on the Solicitor General? Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Solicitor General.
Good afternoon.
May I just say preliminarily that we are happy that you were the one that entered your appearance for this oral arguments. You can take from it whatever you want. Any interpretation?
Thank
now,
you.
some quick general points. Can a provision of the Appropriations Act amend an existing statute? A
No.
special statute? No,
No.
it cannot. That
No,
is
Your
a clear jurisprudence on the part of the court, and it's a canon because it has survived different compositions of court. Next, can an Appropriations Act amend the Constitution?
Certainly not.
Certainly not. Can the provision of an Appropriations Act be interpreted in such a way that it contradicts a statute or a constitutional provision?
No, Your Honor.
It cannot be. So, the duty of any good lawyer is that it has to make sure that the framework provided by the legal order is respected, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, thank you. Now, the PhilHealth Board, the structure of the PhilHealth is that there is a board, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And the board is not the Secretary of Finance, correct?
The Secretary of Finance is a member of the
Yes,
board.
but the board is not the Secretary
Yes.
of Finance.
Yes.
In other words, within the Department of Finance, whatever the Secretary says goes, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whatever the Secretary of the Department of Justice for the Finance, it is the the Secretary's Department of Finance. For the Justice Department, it is the Secretary of Justice. But for PhilHealth, the Secretary only sits in the board, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
One of
13.
No, 18. Because 5 ex officio, correct?
They're already included in the 13.
Other included, okay. One of the 13, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
So the board could have, and I just ask this for emphasis, the board could have not followed the DOF circular, correct?
Yes, they had that discretion.
They had that discretion not to follow the DOF circular. Not only because of their opinion that is illegal, but because they would have thought that for policy reasons, it would not have made sense, correct?
That is a possibility.
Yes. Can you again enumerate the external officers that the PhilHealth Board consulted before they made this decision?
The Office of the Government Corporate Counsel.
Legal, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
The Governance Commission for
Legal.
Government-owned and
Yes.
controlled corporations, or
Legal
the
also.
GCG for
Yes.
short.
And the other one is
Commission on Audit.
the Commission on Audit, again legal, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
So it could have been possible for the Board of PhilHealth to not follow the DOF circular, correct?
If upon consultation with these legal offices, they are convinced that they should not.
Yes, okay. I just wanted to ask that because Justice Mario showed a criminal provision. And if there is a violation, may kasama po ang Secretary of Finance, yung 13 board members. Just kidding. Of course, there is it's a criminal provision, and I'm sure that you have done everything to protect your officers in this particular case. Okay. So is 1D in the Appropriations Act also law?
It's part of the General Appropriations
So it
Act.
is law, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And therefore, when the DOF Secretary followed it, he was already following a legal provision, correct?
Yes, that
Yes.
is correct, Your Honor.
Subject to, of course, your discussion with Justice Ben Kagiwa yesterday relating to whether the harmonization that was done by the OGCC and now the OSG is really the acceptable way to harmonize, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. Now, let us look at Section 11 and how PhilHealth can spend its funds. Okay. So may I ask that Section 11 be put into the monitors, in the monitors. Okay, your characterization of the fund was that it was not reserve fund, correct?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, which...
Your characterization of the fund that was transferred is that it is not reserve fund under Section 11, correct?
Yes, Your Honor, and also pursuant to Section 1D
Yes,
of the GAA.
It is, what do you call it? Surplus fund.
Fund balance,
Part of the fund balance surplus, it was not
Surplus.
used for the reserve fund. Again, can you, is it correct to understand that the limit of the reserve fund is a maximum.
The ceiling, yes, Your
Yes,
Honor.
it's a ceiling, it is not a floor, correct?
No.
And
it's
the
a
ceiling is established by the provision of the Universal Healthcare Act. It is established by actuarial, correct?
Actuarial estimate
Yes.
of the next 2 years
Yes.
projected expenditures.
So what is regulated from your point of view is only the ceiling of the reserve fund, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Where it will be below the reserve, at what amount it will be determined by the Board of PhilHealth, correct?
Exactly, Your Honor.
And the Board of PhilHealth may not use actuarial in order to set the limit of the reserve fund from your point of view. Do I understand you correctly?
The ceiling will just be a guide so that the board will
In
be
other
able
words,
to
the
determine
actual level of the
actual
reserve,
amount.
the actual level of the reserve fund, from the point of view of the board as managers of PhilHealth, can be determined from other things. Like, sige, sinabi nyo ganyan yung statistical probability. However, we want to use the last 2 years in order to determine the actual level of the reserve fund. Is that possible?
That is correct, Your Honor.
For
There
so
are many
long-
policy considerations on the part of the board.
Yes. For so long as it is not above the statutory requirement, correct?
That is what Section 11 provides,
Okay, now,
yes.
stepping back, Section 11 therefore prohibits PhilHealth from putting too much into the reserve fund, correct?
Yes, that seems to be the purpose.
Am I correct in saying the reason for this is so that PhilHealth can actually have funds to be able to use to meet the objectives of the Universal Healthcare Act, correct?
Definitely, Your Honor. That's the purpose of putting a ceiling.
Yes,
So that
because-
money could be used
Yes.
for the operations.
Because the PhilHealth is not an investment vehicle. It
No,
is
it's not.
an agency that is critical for universal health care to provide the financing in order that we achieve universal health care, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So in other words, from your point of view, anything below the reserve fund is all right according to the law.
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct, Your Honor.
And actually, we see this in some of the provisions, according to you, that there is a provision, later paragraphs of Section 11, where it says that any excess should be invested and that no excess of it should be transferred. And of course, there is Section 12 of the Universal Healthcare Act. Can we flash Section 12? Section 12 actually states that for administrative cost, you cannot go beyond 7.5%. In other words, PhilHealth cannot give too many benefits to its staff. I will leave it to the chief to interpolate on that. 7.5% only. PhilHealth cannot go into very nice buildings. And the reason for this again is because the law wants that PhilHealth focuses its funds in order to address and achieve the purposes of the Universal Healthcare Act. Is that correct?
Exactly, Your Honor.
So PhilHealth is not also a revenue-generating agency.
Not principally a revenue-generating agency.
It is a revenue-generating agency for itself, correct?
Yes, for itself and
purposes.
its operations.
Maybe I asked the wrong question. Is it a revenue-generating agency for the entire government?
No,
No, it cannot
not.
be, correct?
it's not, Your Honor.
When it transferred funds, did it become a revenue-generating agency for the entire government?
Not necessarily, Your Honor. It simply
Not necessarily.
complied with a directive.
When there were extra funds, because we found, you call it surplus funds. Okay, you have estimates on your contractual liabilities, etc. They had estimates on that, okay, and so on and so forth. So there were extra funds. Expenses were already covered. Their liabilities were already covered. There were extra funds. And PhilHealth now is telling us that at the time that it was transferred, it hadn't achieved all of the objectives of the Universal Healthcare Act. Not only that, it had not achieved the goals of PhilHealth in relation to the Universal Healthcare Act. Correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
So the transfer was illegal.
No, Your Honor.
Why is it not illegal?
Your Honor, the inability of PhilHealth to achieve milestones under the Universal Healthcare Act is caused by many factors, including structural obstacles, absorptive capacity, and so forth and so on. In other words, Your Honor, much as PhilHealth would like to devote all of its resources to healthcare, simply it's not possible at that given point in time. So its resources lie there idle. So as a matter of cash management on the
Can
part
the funds
of
of
the government,
PhilHealth be used in order to fund, let us say, 5 million for the peace process?
Your Honor, the funds of PhilHealth,
No, just answer my question.
no,
Cannot be used.
No,
Can
Your
it be used for performance bonus of the members of the Solicitor General's office?
no, Your Honor.
What about the Supreme Court? Be
No, Your
careful. No, it cannot, right?
No, Your Honor. no.
Because from your perspective, and I also heard this from the Secretary of Finance, it has to be also for health, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Can it be used for a bridge in Guimaras?
No, Your Honor.
Cannot be, correct?
No.
Can it be used for paying the initial funds for some of our foreign loans?
No, Your Honor.
Cannot be. Now, I'm showing you your submission to us in relation to where PhilHealth funds and PDIC funds were spent. And I am arranging it in the order of magnitude. So for purpose number 17, counterpart of foreign assisted project, health or not health?
Not health.
Not health.
Not health.
39 billion.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Purpose number 19, personnel benefit, 37 billion. Health or not health?
A portion of that would pertain to the Department of Health as
Okay.
well as
Am I
PhilHealth.
correct in saying that this was part of the tranche that was given to all government officials?
No, Your Honor.
Not all. This one, 37 billion?
I'm sorry.
Purpose number 19.
The 30.
Yes, the promise of the President to increase the salaries of government in 4 tranches. This was part of it, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. So you actually paid us with this, correct?
Your Honor, the funds that came from PhilHealth
Not this.
went to the National Treasury,
Okay, now-
not directly to a specific purpose.
Okay.
It went to the Treasury.
Yes. So if I ask you to submit to us which ones of these are health related, you will, correct?
Yes, we can.
And we will also ask the petitioners to actually take a look at this, including the SARO, because you submitted all the SAROs. Not
Yes,
the
yeah.
actual SAROs, but the purposes of the special allotment release orders. So that SARO, that they will now compute and see whether if it's relevant to their argument. Okay. My other question is, okay, so there's a specific provision there in the Universal Declaration or Universal Healthcare Act that it has to be, all of it has to be for health purposes, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Yesterday, in your discussion with Justice Ben on harmonization, okay, he had this way of harmonizing Section 45 of the Administrative Code, which requires that there be an appropriation, and then the syntax law, which earmarks the syntaxes for health, etc. So his solution was that yes, it is earmarked, but it must first be appropriated. Okay? But they cannot appropriate it for any other thing except for health. That was his way of harmonizing it. And you politely and respectfully agreed to disagree. Correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. Okay. Now, but that is not the only way that we should look at what is the proper harmonization. It is not your word versus the word of a sitting justice. One, justice. So, may pag-asa ka pa kasi 14 kami. Okay? Majority of the justices, etc. Okay. We have to look at what the Constitution provides, correct?
Of course, Your Honor.
So, is the right to health a concrete, solid right? Or is it hortatory only?
Pardon, Your Honor?
Is it hortatory? Does it
Important.
only exhort government to look at the right to health, or is the right to health already a fundamental right? It is an entitlement given to every citizen of the Republic.
Your Honor, I have to qualify my answer because right to health
Yes.
is a very broad and general right to speak of.
Okay.
But
I will show you Article 3, Section 1 of the Constitution. Article 3, Section 1 says, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property. Yet in the decisions of the Supreme Court, life there is a very concrete thing in relation to due process. And then we go to Section 4 of Article 3, which I did not have it prepared, but freedom of speech, freedom of expression, that is very broad, right? So it is of the same nature, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, okay. The right to life in Section 1 also means the right to health, correct?
Yes, I
Had
would
there
say
been no
so.
other provision on health in our Constitution, it is possible for the court who are more enlightened to actually say, embedded in the concept of life, never mind what the American founding fathers will say, never mind what the Trump court will say, but insofar as the Philippine court is concerned, because we see so many people, 57%, according to SWS, poverty, hunger. Okay? Therefore, our interpretation can be, if there were no other provision, that the right to life includes the right to health, correct?
Yes, Your Honor, but there are other provisions in the Constitution pertaining to the
Yes, that's-
right to
Exactly,
health.
that's where I'm going to. Because it is not only the right to life, but before I go there, in this particular provision, it simply says that there is a right and it only prohibits government from interfering from those rights, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Because that is without due
Due process of law.
shall be deprived, which means there is no intervention of government. So it's a prohibition. It's negative, correct?
Yes.
But if you look at the other provisions, let us start with Article 2, Section 9. Okay? It is very clear here that the state shall promote. It is not may, but shall. A just and dynamic social order, but I wanted to highlight, free the people from poverty through policies that provide adequate social services, promote full employment, a rising standard of living, and an improved quality of life for all. This is a constitutional provision, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And it is not a political platform.
No.
It is a constitutional provision which says that the state is there not only to bother us with traffic controls, but also because, let's just go to Section 9, but also because the target should be to free our people from poverty through policies that provide adequate social services, promote full employment, rising standard of living, improve quality of life for all. I do not see there infrastructure, although it can be indirect, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
But
That is
certainly the priority is provide social services, correct?
correct. Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, next, Section 10. That these rights have to be interpreted in the context of a collective. And therefore, it says, the state also shall promote social justice. And therefore, between persons that have the capability and persons that do not have the capability, our resources should be focused more on the people without. Correct?
That is correct.
Kung sino ang wala, siya dapat ang tutulungan ng ating pamahalaan.
Tama
Correct?
po.
Yes. And that's why corruption is so bad, right?
Yes.
Because it serves the powerful. Correct? And it is the powerful that get more out of our own funds rather than they using it for people that do not have a home, that cannot eat 3 square meals a day, correct?
Agree, Your Honor.
Yes, and therefore it says here to promote social justice. Okay, next is a favorite provision, Section 11. Our whatever policy that we do, the Constitution actually says that we value the dignity of every human person And not only guarantee, it guarantees full respect for human rights, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And health is a human right.
Yes, Your Honor.
You agree? Okay, next. Therefore, next is Article 15. Shall protect and promote the right to health of the people. So it is here. There is a right to health, correct?
Exactly, Your Honor.
And it also says that the right to health is not only government's concern, but it also concern of every individual, except that it recognizes, the beauty of this provision recognizes that sometimes we have fake news. In other words, things like you have to drink a horse medicine in order to protect yourself against COVID. I will not mention the medicine. And therefore, part of the role of government is to instill health consciousness among our people, correct?
Exactly, Your Honor.
Yes. And of course, you have Article 13, Section 11. I will just flash it. And Article 13, Section 12. Okay? And in Article 13, shall establish and maintain an effective food and drug regulatory system. And this was the provision that was used in a recent case, Department of Health versus Philippine Tobacco Institute, GR number 200431, July 13, 2021. I did not memorize, I am reading it. Okay. So again, when we harmonize it, therefore, these provisions, a Universal Health Care Act, should we not interpret the harmonization to give effect to the right to health rather than to support the other goals of government? What do you think?
Primarily, Your Honor, to comply with these state policies on the right to health.
Therefore, when funds were taken from PhilHealth and used for the peace process, I am for the peace process, as you may know, just to clarify. It became unconstitutional.
Your Honor, the money taken from PhilHealth, as I said earlier,
Was not used.
went to the Treasury, commingled there in the Treasury for proper application to the various uses
So it's worse.
enumerated in the unprogrammed appropriations.
Yes, so it's worse. Because it was put in a fund not for health in general, but it was commingled and then bahala na. You gave it to the Department of Budget and Management in order that it be. So there is no way that we can see how much was actually transferred, 60 billion. There is no way that we can see that all of it was done for health.
There is a way,
There is
Your
a way.
Honor, because
Okay.
we have a list of the SAROs listed, or rather issued by the Department of Budget and Management, and showing for which particular purpose under the unprogrammed appropriations that particular SARO was applied.
Okay.
And we have seen this, and we have found that almost the entire amount of 60 billion pesos, which came from the fund balance of PhilHealth,
Okay.
was applied
Thank
to
you.
health-related projects.
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor General. I will await your submission in your memoranda following this trend. And we are assuming, of course, that it was part of the general fund, not part of the reserve fund, correct?
Yes, Your Honor,
Yes.
that is correct.
Because if it was part of the reserve fund, we are in trouble, correct?
Yes, that's very true.
Definitely. May I now ask the Secretary of Finance to take the podium again? Yes. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And I listened intently.
Thank you for the pleasure, Your Honor.
Yes. I listened intently to your presentation. I listened intently also to your answers to the questions of my colleagues. I hope that I will not need to repeat some of my questions. And if I do, my apologies. And I suppose it's just for emphasis. And I understand your role as a fundraiser. But that is a statement that is too broad because you also determine the types of taxes, etc. You are also part of the economic team of the government.
That is correct.
My first question is, why did the government opt to insert a provision in the General Appropriations Act rather than simply put amendments to the charter of PDIC, not in question here, or to the charter of charter of PhilHealth?
That was the decision of Congress when they passed the General Appropriations Act.
But knowing now the issues that are now being raised, and having been a legislator for 30 years,
Almost 30 years.
almost 30 years, from the House to the Senate,
That is
including the
correct.
local government, would you have opted to amend the law?
I
Just to
would-
amend the law and put a provision there to assist the deficits, to assist unprogrammed, etc.
We will be amending the charter of PhilHealth soon, but not necessarily for this purpose.
Not for this purpose.
Yes.
Okay. Just to clarify also from your statement, did I catch you correct when you said, did I understand you correctly when you said this was a temporary stopgap
correct.
measure, correct?
That is correct.
And that it will not be repeated again.
That is correct. It is only found in the General Appropriations of 2024.
However, there were executive orders in the past
Yes,
that were issued, correct?
that is correct.
But we can never be sure that there will be another situation in the future,
That is correct.
and hopefully not during your term, the next
It-
3.
It is possible during
Yes.
the Trump administration, they just imposed additional tariffs on the Philippines.
Okay, so we cannot dismiss this case on the ground that it is not capable of repetition. So you are saying that we do need to rule on this case, correct?
That would depend.
That would depend on whether it is for you or against you, correct?
Not necessarily,
Yes,
because as I see it, there is no one injured.
yes. Anyway, again, the position of the other side is different.
Yes.
But we respect the position of government in this case.
Yes.
Just to
And
show
we
you.
also respect the
Yes.
position of the opposition.
Yes, and I am sure that you listen to the health advocates and
Yes.
that it is very important to listen to the voices of the people that critique government because
Yes.
it pushes us to become better than who we are.
I have become a better legislator by doing so.
Yes. Now, just to show you again that I understood it correctly, the budget deficits through the years. Can you flash it? The ones that we have. So we have been suffering through a lot of budget deficits, and here we are looking at the percentage of budget deficits on our GDP for the past years.
That is
And
correct.
it has been increasing. And this is worrisome
Yes.
because this means that we have to fund it in a way that will curtail our growth. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Yes. Just to show you that I understood you. Next is that borrowing is difficult because debt servicing through the years has also been increasing. So our data shows, next slide please, that our servicing of our debt has been increasing through the years.
That is correct, especially now that interest rates are going up.
Yes,
Or have
because
gone
of
up, yes.
activities made by a certain president and the other retaliatory tariffs, among others, correct?
Even prior to.
Even prior to that.
As I did mention, you have two hot wars, a cold war, a trade war, and
Yes.
now a bigger trade war.
I understand. So in 2024, you were faced with 34% debt servicing. Almost 1/3 of the total of our budget equivalent
No.
was for debt servicing, not correct?
In terms of interest expense, roughly about 13%.
No, this is debt servicing, which
Yes,
includes
let
the...
me qualify.
Yes.
In terms of interest expense, more or less 13% of the entire national budget. With regard to principal, it's roughly 1 trillion.
Okay.
So all told, you're talking about a deficit of 1.5 plus 1
So it's
trillion.
even worse.
It's about 2.5 trillion a year.
Okay, so it's even worse than our own statistics, correct? little
Depending on how you look at it. So the actual statistics may not be totally accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So also that there's a difference between a local loan from our own treasury
Yes, correct.
and an external loan, correct?
That is correct.
And therefore, that's very important to consider.
That
And
is correct.
This is what we have in terms of our external loan, correct? And
75% of our debt is domestic and 25% is foreign.
yes, but 25% is nice to hear, but if you look at the magnitude of it, it is quite large.
Roughly 10 trillion is domestic and 5 trillion is foreign.
Okay, so when we speak
So mas
in,
malaki yung domestic.
yes, but we still have 5 trillion in terms of external, and
Correct.
our statistics show that a lot of it is really to the multilateral creditors.
That is correct. But it's
Yes.
also important to note that our gross international reserves are higher than our foreign debt.
Yes, I am sure that you are also looking at the other aspects. But for my purposes, I am sorry that we were unable to do the research for 2025 for the bilateral creditors. But sufficient for my purposes is just to show you that members of the court agree where you are coming from.
Yes.
But
Thank you.
you must agree with me that the fact of a deficit is not necessarily bad from a certain economic point of view, called
For us
modern monetary economics, correct?
Okay. That would depend. There are benchmarks to follow. A sustainable debt or deficit is roughly 3% of GDP. Last year, we were 5.7% of GDP. We achieved a credit rating upgrade last year. We expect another credit rating upgrade if we follow our path, that this year our deficit should be 5.3%, next year 4.7%, the following year should be 4.2%, and that by 2028
Yes.
we reduce that to 3.7%, 3.8%.
Yes.
Then we are fiscally sustainable.
What I mean is
Yes.
that deficits per se, from a
Yes.
certain perspective, I speak of Stephanie Kelton, the deficit myth,
Mm-hmm.
Warren Mosler, Bill Mitchell, L. Randall Ray.
Yes.
Okay.
So deficits are not bad.
Not bad.
Yes.
The limit is actually inflation because we can
That's
print
one.
money.
In terms of I know where you're coming from. In terms
Yes.
of modern monetary theory, that has been extensively discussed in the DOF and the BSP, and I'm a lone voice there as far as that is concerned. But having said that, like I said, in the case of the Philippines, we need to follow certain benchmarks. Maybe modern monetary theory is not too much applicable in the Philippines because we are not a reserve currency.
Yes, but we do print our own currency,
That is
and therefore
correct.
it's important to understand that
Yes.
for our currency, it is inflation and is real resource availability that's important. I'm just saying this
That is
because
correct.
I am looking at it from the lens of law and economics
Yes.
when I try to determine whether the context of transferring the funds
Yes.
from the point of view of the constitutional requirements to also provide for health
Yes.
can be constitutional. But
Yes.
again, it's there. Okay.
It's worth noting that social services in the budget is the biggest pie compared to infrastructure.
Okay.
Hospitals are also infrastructure and
Yes.
social services.
Yes. So, just for my curiosity, and I hope you
Yes, sir.
can excuse me for this question, when you say you are the lone voice, you are the lone voice for modern monetary economics?
Theory,
You're the lone voice. Okay.
yes, in the DOF.
I am happy to hear that,
Yes, sir.
but I do not know if the others will be happy to hear that I am happy to hear that. Okay. Let's look at your daily math for government.
Yes,
15.8 billion pesos a day
is what we are spending.
spending.
And when we pass the budget, many people think that you have 5.7 trillion in the bank. That is not true.
Yes,
We
I
have to
understand.
collect 11.7
11.7
billion a day.
and 4.1 billion by loans, correct?
That's only for the deficit.
Okay, now I see your point from the point of view of income. But what I want to invite you to look at is the expense. The expense side.
Yes.
And the expense side, which means 50.8 billion, that can include funds which are the subject of corruption, correct?
That is correct.
Yes. So when we say
But I would
15.8,
hasten to add that there is more corruption on the revenue side than on the expenditure side.
yes, but still, when we look at 15.8 billion a day, we can take a look at not only corruption, outright stealing from people, the people's money, but also inefficiencies, correct?
That is correct.
Correct. And therefore, the gap that you need to fill in can sometimes be addressed not only by transferring funds, but also by attending to accountability, correct?
Definitely.
And accountability includes following the rule of law, correct?
That is correct.
And therefore, it is very important that we follow our SPJI, Strategic Plan for Judicial Intervention, and our current thrust towards integrity in our court, integrity at judiciary.gov.ph, correct? And we are hoping that...
I'm not familiar with
Yes.
the judiciary, but I would assume you're correct.
Yes. And, well, I am. On SPJI at least,
Yes,
okay?
yes. For sure.
I needed to mention that because
Yes, yeah.
alangan naman si Justice Mario lang magbabanggit, okay? But the point there again is, when we look at expenses and we look at collection, it is also that there are leakages along the way, correct?
That is correct.
And that the stopgap measure of actually transferring 60 billion from PhilHealth and 100 something from PDIC,
PDIC 104?
104 from PDIC was really a stopgap measure that did not address the systemic problem, correct?
Yeah, I think it does.
Well, it does for the moment, but it does also for teaching a lesson to these government corporations from your point of view, correct?
Yes, it's teaching a lesson to the government corporations because if you did do that with PhilHealth, they would not have improved their benefit packages. If we do not reduce, as you correctly pointed out, the reserve requirement, then there will be less money for increasing benefit packages to reduce out-of-pocket expenses.
Okay. So, to solve our economic dilemma, we are not yet in crisis, but if we do not handle this well, we can be in crisis, correct? There is
That is correct.
There is an argument to be made
Yes.
that corruption, if it has become bigger, should be addressed.
Yes,
You agree?
correct, and that includes the fiscal health of the nation.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you very much.
That was very enlightening.
Thank you.
Thank you. May I now
Maraming salamat
ask
po.
Sunny, Africa? Okay, you may stay in your place. Okay. Mr. Africa, are you familiar with the statistics, with the recent SWS survey on hunger that was recently published?
Yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. Am I correct to say that 27.2% of our households, according to that study, in March, is suffering through some form of involuntary hunger?
According to the SWS survey, yes, Your Honor.
Yes. And if I did make a rough computation, that would amount to 7.5 million households. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, but it is not only those that are hungry that suffer from the impact of not having the proper funding in order to attend to health issues, but more than them, correct?
Yes, Your Honor, as you mentioned earlier.
Yes. And according to your studies, what is now the reasonable living daily income for Filipino families?
Our computation of the family living wage for a family of 5 is at about 1,227 pesos.
1,200
27 pesos on the national average
daily for a family or for a person?
for a family of 5.
And minimum wage averages?
It's 645 in NCR. It's 361 in BARM. National average is about, I think, 435. I think 450 pesos.
Okay. Now, what we heard from government is that there's absorptive capacity problems in the PhilHealth. Therefore, they removed funds because that was the right economic thing to do in order to be able to fund the other projects which may affect also the health of our citizens. Okay? Do you accept that?
No, Your Honor, because the opportunity cost of the impact on lowering PhilHealth indirect beneficiaries, we did see a fall in the number of PhilHealth indirect beneficiaries because already of budget cuts. It was, I think, 42 million in indirect beneficiary in 2023, down to about 21 million in 2024. That immediately impacts on, we believe, roughly 60 to 70% of poor and vulnerable Filipinos, including, according to the Bangko Sentral, 75% of families who do not have any savings, whether in the bank, at home, in their pockets. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Africa.
Thank you.
Ms. Susara, I am confused about your statement regarding unprogrammed funds during in your opening. In a nutshell, not more than 3 minutes, can you tell us again your view of the unprogrammed funds as it has morphed today?
Okay, so originally, the unprogrammed funds were just standby appropriation. So it's a list of general line items of appropriation which the executive branch can trigger release of funds for only on certain instances. Those are 3. 1, if there are excess revenue collections. Number 2, if there are new revenue measures. Number 3, if there are foreign loans. But it has morphed in the last 3 years. In fact, even in the 2025 budget, there's still bloated and program appropriations. What's been happening is that many priority programs and projects for social services and infrastructure projects that were originally part of the programmed appropriations, which in simple terms is the portion of the budget that has guaranteed cash funding from the different sources of financing, have been essentially deprioritized and placed into the unprogrammed appropriations. And so that is the reason why on the expenditure side, there is a huge problem. And this is what necessitated the need to sweep the cash from the GOCC. So in my view, it was an unnecessary problem. Why do I say this? It's because when the executive branch submits the budget or the national expenditure program to Congress, they factor in the fiscal program, precisely all of the things that the good Secretary of Finance mentioned: revenues, expenditures, deficit, and debt. The problem is the bicameral conference committee included hundreds of billions of insertions, and placed them, essentially replaced what were taken out and placed in the unprogrammed appropriations with a lot of many other programs, primarily in the budgets of DSWD and the DPWH. So what happened there is all of the things that were slashed from the programmed appropriations now part in the unprogrammed appropriations. Remember, this is the part of the budget that doesn't have guaranteed cash cover. But they are priority projects. The government concedes that they are priority projects, and so they need to be funded. And so because of that situation, which has been happening for the past 4 fiscal years, we are in a situation where the fiscal oversight agencies have to grapple with raising additional revenues, raising additional non-tax sources of financing in order to plug the unfunded and programmed appropriations.
Thank you for that enlightenment. It is also part of the context that we will want to take into consideration. And I am sure that you have the numbers to support your claim. And not now. And when you will be required to submit your memoranda as amicus, then you will probably help us with the proper numbers as well as the primary sources for all of this.
I will, Your Honors.
Thank you. And finally, Dr. Orville Solon, having heard all of what you have heard so far for the past 5 sittings and the clarifications of the lawyers, from your point of view, from an economic point of view, would it have been better not to transfer from PhilHealth?
after listening to the hearings, I now believe that the transfer, whether or not, regardless of how it will be decided by the court, has already generated the kinds of actions that I thought, as an economist, the incentive effects, already in terms of addressing problems, intrinsic problems in the PhilHealth program.
Because in your opening, you did say that, to tell PhilHealth that they had a problem, the idle funds had to be used and transferred. And right now, not only is there a new precedent, that there are new programs that are now being done by PhilHealth, although of course, as a citizen, and for the citizens that are listening right now, for the people that are listening right now, it's not yet enough. And it will never be enough until they will have the full kind of universal health care. And I hope that we do not judge our people that they demand that they do not continue to suffer. Correct?
I am one with everybody in the room, which points out that the Universal Health Care Act is severely underfunded. But my outrage comes not because it's not funded, but because there's funds that could have been used. My apprehension now, my remaining apprehension is, can this attention that is given by the public through this discussion with the court be sustained so that PhilHealth actually does good its promises to undertake these reforms that has been discussed?
Thank you, Doctor. And that is beyond the court. And I think the Chief and the other Associate Justices